Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar presentation, 5 Lessons Learned from NeoSystems' Successful FP&A Journey. I'm Don Carnevale, Marketing Director at NeoSystems, and I'll be your host for today's event. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter those in the Q&A area within the Zoom window. Now I'd like to introduce the moderator for today's discussion, Kathy Gibbs, Vice President of Partners and Alliances at NeoSystems. Kathy?
Thank you, Don. It's so great to be here. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. We're thrilled to share the story of NeoSystems and the valuable lessons that we've learned on our financial planning and budgeting journey. So this process can be challenging for many people and organizations, especially like government contractors. And we hope our experience provides useful insights. Today, we will delve into the 5 key challenges we face, starting with the use of Excel, the journey to finding a better tool set, and how it transformed our approach. We'll explore the significance of producing a rolling forecast and the benefits of having accurate reporting as well as dashboards. And we're going to touch on user adoption. So before we get into all of that, I would like to do some introductions. Susan Mitchell is our COO and CFO at NeoSystems, and Shauna Burgoyne is our Senior Director of Finance and Planning. Susan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
I'm the CFO and COO for NeoSystems. My background, I've been using CostPoint for about 25 years in the GovCon space. And we at NeoSystems actually run our business like GovCons do. We calculate indirect rates and everything like that. I was very excited when I got to NeoSystems and 4 years ago. NeoSystems has been around for about 20 years, but I actually had this great set of tools that I got to use, and adaptive planning being one of them. And with that, I'm going to have Shauna introduce herself.
My name's Shauna. I'm the Senior Director of Finance and Planning here at Neo. I've been working in the government contracting industry for over 20 years and have been a CostPoint user for over 20 years. I actually led the implementation of our adaptive instance back in 2015, 2016. And I'm the user here of our adaptive instance, and I also lead the FP&A practice here at NeoSystems.
Thank you, Shauna. Susan, would you mind taking us through a little bit about who NeoSystems is and what we do?
Systems, we have a variety of lines of business and things that help government contractors with their back office support. What that means is that we provide things like your accounting, your HR support, your IT, payroll, basically any of those functions that you would have to hire somebody to be on staff to do for you, you can outsource those to NeoSystems. And what's great about that is the fact that instead of having to have a controller or a CFO that sits right down the hall from you and you have to pay them full time, if you only needed, say, a part-time fractional person for that stuff, you can get the benefits and the expertise of having that individual, but not having the cost that goes along with it. So in addition to that, we also have our hosting line of business. So you can host your applications and services, various other things with us. We have security services. So a lot of you might have heard about CMMC and some of those other acronyms that are floating around right now in the security space. So we also provide support for that. And then we have professional services that also do implementations, upgrades, integrations, extensions. So any of those things where you want to improve a process in your organization, the professional services team can help you.
Thank you, Susan. It sounds like NeoSystems offers a comprehensive solution for all government contractors. Shauna, let's move to you. I want to hear a little bit about the acronym FP&A, what it means, what it stands for, just in case we have some new people on the webinar today. If you could take us through that and then talk a little bit about what NeoSystems encountered that led to a shift in how we approach our budget and planning. So let's take us through a little bit about FP&A and financial planning and analysis.
Sure. So as you said, FP&A stands for Financial Planning and Analysis. For the topic of today's discussion, we're going to be focusing on financial planning, workforce planning, operational planning, monthly close, and actual cost reporting and analysis.
All right, that sounds amazing. Looking forward to that. Shauna, when you were here and facing those challenges, can you talk to us a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, sure. When we look at what Neo had in place 8 years ago, and we were faced with several challenges. We did not have a collaborative process. Our budgeting tool that we used was very complex. You pretty much had to be a coder to be able to use it. And the effort required to produce forecasts throughout the year was just too daunting to be able to even do it. Once our accounting period closed, it took well over a week to consolidate all of the data into our financial reporting package. So by the time our users got it, the data was stagnant. They weren't able to make business decisions that were relevant at the time anymore.
My goodness, sounds like a lot. Susan, as CFO, how would those challenges affect your business and the business overall?
So what I would say with those challenges, one, I took over as CFO 3 years ago. So I'm very glad I was not here in the dark ages, as I will call it. No, we weren't using adaptive, because the challenges from that perspective is, as a CFO, you want information timely in a timely fashion. Like, you don't want to have to wait for somebody 2 weeks after the close period for people to put together data and run very manual processes to be able to get that, because by the time you get it, then you can't make any decisions on it that are actionable. So the great thing about this journey that we went on is that we're able to get that information and get it quickly and be able to make adjustments or know what we need, change our path or whatever going forward.
I can't imagine. So when you had data in front of you, you didn't know if it was accurate or not, correct? That had to be extremely difficult.
So what I would say is, when using Excel, that is when you have those types of challenges and things like that.
Shauna, if that was all before, let's fast forward to today. How are things different? How and in what ways?
Along the journey to select, implement, and benefit from an FP&A software, there were key lessons that NeoSystems learned along the way.
Oh, I know the first one, because that takes us back. The first one you called it, I believe, Dark Days of Excel. Now, we all love Excel, right? We don't want to, but do you want to talk a little bit about what that means and what it was like in the past?
Sure. So let me first say I'm a finance person. I love Excel just as much as the next person. I could spend the next hour talking about my love for VLOOKUPs, but our process was painful. We've had multiple versions of our budget that had to be merged into one final version. And in some cases, we had a shared Excel document that kept getting broken every time users went in to make updates. Then we had a final version, and when we wanted to report against it, there was no easy way to bring in the actuals against that version and do variance analysis at the level we wanted to do to analyze our data. So in addition, there's no way to drill into the transactional cost to see if there is a variance, what makes up that variance, why were the costs over or under what we were planning.
Understood. And then, Susan, something like where you sit as a CFO, when you would look at that data, would you know what was accurate at one time or another? Or would there be different spreadsheets and different things that you'd be looking at?
So within Excel, you try to have checks and balances and things like that in Excel spreadsheet. But what will happen over the course of time, once many people have their hands in it and the Excel files become very voluminous and everything like that, is that if you get an answer that either seems like really good or really bad, you question whether something has happened in the model and the model is the problem, or if it's actually really the way it is. Then you end up spending a ton of time going back through the model and trying to tick and tie and trying to make sure that that something weird hasn't happened in the model, and that cells that were linked and things like that aren't broken and stuff and things like that. So what I would say is, there was a lot, you're always somewhat skeptical.
Yeah.
Is it truly accurate? Is this truly the correct thing?
Oh, that had to be such a hardship. All right. That takes us right in then to a tool set that you don't have to worry about that experience. Shauna, the second lesson learned is all about choosing the right tool set. Can you talk to us about Workday Adaptive Planning?
Yeah, so as there's a number of FP&A software products available today, there's a lot to consider and things to look for. And we wanted to work with something that would benefit government contractors as we run our business similarly. We looked for a system that would seamlessly integrate with our ERP, which is Deltek CostPoint, and also had a friendly user interface that would be easy for our team to adopt. We also wanted to be able to easily create what we call a rolling forecast, so we can make updates to our budget as the business evolves, but also keep a copy of our budget intact so we can easily run variance analysis reports against it. And that is what Workday Adaptive Planning does.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you show us Workday Adaptive Planning?
I certainly can. This is Workday Adaptive Planning. As you can see, it opens into a home screen here with our top apps. You'll see I use typically sheets, reports, and dashboards, but as a user, you may use something different. But this is our home screen. I'll point you out here to our design integrations. This is where we have the integration with our ERP, which is CostPoint. Adaptive is agnostic as far as what it connects to. It can connect to any of your ERPs likely. But since we use CostPoint, that's what we'll use for the purpose of this demonstration. You'll see it can bring in anything that's within CostPoint. In the tables within CostPoint, you'll see there's GL detail, project details, there's employee details, pretty much anything you want to integrate. Typically what people will integrate is their account structure, their org structure, their project details, their employees, things like that. But anything you want to integrate, you can. You can also integrate with things like Salesforce if you want to do opportunity planning. So anything like that you can integrate with. Once you've done the integration, you've got your data built up. How we plan, we like to plan by personnel because we're a services industry. So you can build up your personnel sheet. You'll see here our personnel, all of this data is brought in directly from our, and that integration could be done either hourly, weekly, daily, whatever cadence you want. You can also do it manually if you're like, hey, I know we just made an update in CostPoint or your tool, I want to bring it in now. You can go hit run manually and bring it in immediately. So this is the employee data. After we have our employees in there and we know that we're forecasting against the right employees, then you can start estimating their time against specific projects if you wanted to do a project-based forecast. So here we have all of the employees. You'll see some employees are forecasted against several projects. This employee works a lot, as you can see. And then once you have all their forecast in there, we're choosing to do it by percentages. You have the option to do it by hours. If you prefer our business, we prefer to base on percentages so we can look at our utilization targets. But if you wanted to put hours in here, the model could be built to do hours as well. Once that's in there, you can have a summary sheet that will show you all of your employees here, for example, what projects they're forecasted against, what labor costs go against those specific projects. And then if you wanted to drill down and look at specific employees, you could then drill down and see what projects that employee is forecasted against. From there, that can roll into your income statement. You'll see here, this is an income statement. I have the version set on actuals. You'll see there's multiple versions that you could have and you can create many versions, as many as you want. So we have a budget, we have a working forecast, and always an actuals. Once your actuals are in here, you can drill into your actuals to see what transactions make up those costs. It will bring up all of the transactions. If we had those loaded in our database, it would show all the transactions that made up those specific costs. So let's say you had a variance and you wanted to know why, you could drill into it. In addition, you can look at your versions and do comparisons. So if I wanted to go in here and say, I want to display here, I can show which years I want to look at that data. I can go to a version comparison. And let's say I wanted to compare my actuals against my working forecast. I would choose that. I could also say I want to choose the working forecast, or let's say you wanted to look at last year's actuals, for example. You can offset it by a year and bring that in. And then once that's pulled up, you'll see here that this is your 2023 actuals, this is your 24 actuals, and you can do a comparison of what changed year over year. So the version comparison is super helpful. That is all I'm going to show for now, Kathy. I'll save the rest here later. I don't want to spoil all the surprises.
All right. He says, I'll take back the screen. Thank you. All right. Now, by the way, that looked very straightforward and easy. I think you make it look so easy too, but because you're a natural at it. So let's talk about rolling forecast. That has been mentioned. Can you explain what it is, and is it easy to produce, and how much time and effort goes into creating something like that? And also, I was thinking, how does this process compare to how things were done before we had adaptive planning and you put rolling forecasts in place?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually funny you asked that because when we closed our accounting period last month, Susan sent me an email and said, "Hey, Shauna, can you create a new rolling forecast for June that has actuals through May so I can start working on a new rolling forecast?" So from the time I received the email to the time I logged into Adaptive, created the new forecast, then went back to Susan and told her the forecast was available for her, it was exactly 5 minutes. So I could show you that email. It was very quick.
I'm very quick on the draw.
I was ready for it.
So, Susan, did she get a raise like right then and there?
Not right then and there.
Be nice to you. But it's really quick and it's super helpful because you could still have your original forecast there and you could have the new rolling forecast. You can report against either of those, or you can report against both of them to show how the new forecast changes from the old forecast. So it's super helpful to see that information. Now, if you want to compare that to the way it used to be, if she had asked for that information first, I might have questioned my life choices, but it would have taken me over a week to get all that data in there, to pull all the actuals in, because we did it by org, we did it by level, we did it at the account level. There's just too much information. So to try to get that in there into a spreadsheet and then get those templates out there so it could be updated, it would have taken me well over
A week compared to
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Let's not forget about scenario planning. I know you had talked about that. Both you and Susan shared about how important that is.
Yeah, so that's something new that Workday I think they implemented it back in March of this year, perhaps, and it's really powerful. See, a person can actually go in and create what's called a personal scenario. You can take your working forecast, for example, create a personal scenario, say, "Hey, I know in my division, we think we're going to win this huge award. I want to put in a scenario in here to see what happens if I hire those individuals, how the revenue will change, how my costs will change, how that's going to impact our bottom line," because that's all what we all care about. And you can put that scenario into your own personal scenario. It will show the changes that you've made. It will highlight those changes. And then if you do win that award, you can just roll it into your forecast, push it in, approve it,
Awesome.
and then it'll be part of your forecast. You can also report on that scenario or just the forecast. And if you don't win the award, you can just pretend it never happened. It's fantastic.
So it's like your playground, right? You can
That's
kind
exactly
of move
right.
things around, but then you're not affecting what everyone else is looking at because it's just yours, right?
That's exactly right. It
Okay.
doesn't affect anything until you approve it and push it into your actual forecast.
Okay. All right. Susan, let's address our number 4 lesson, and it's reporting and dashboard, everyone's favorite. How important is that to your day-to-day business operation?
I have to say the reporting and dashboarding is very important. One, because the dashboards, you can go in and get a quick picture of what's going on as of that moment. And then two, on the reporting, the best thing about what we have in the tool that we chose is being able to get those reports updated and done quickly at the end of a month. The package that used to have to be done, if it was done manually, literally it would have taken days to go back and update and everything like that. But what this allows us to do, the reporting features in Adaptive, it allows us to take those forecasts with the actual load in the actuals and get those comparisons very quickly and in a format that are ready for me to send off to whatever other users are going to be reviewing them. So that is a really nice feature of the system that allows us to do what we need to do from a business perspective.
All right.
Sha-
There's nothing better than seeing it, right? So, Shauna,
Yes.
you're on.
I would love to show you my favorite things. Okay, so
One of my favorite things.
All right, so this is back in Adaptive. We're back in Workday Adaptive within the dashboards section. So it's easy to navigate to. I call this our little hamburger. So you get to the dashboards here and it'll show you have all the perspectives that are available to you. You also can have personal dashboards that are only available to you if you want to create something that you just want to see for yourself and you don't want to share. And then there's also shared dashboards. A few things to note about this is for your users, we'll say adaptability. It's really helpful to have a planning dashboard set up for your users. Let's say you have people that you want them to forecast direct costs or projects. You can set up just the sheets that they need to see for their planning. They don't have to go through and see your capital planning, your depreciation planning, all the additional stuff. They can actually just look at what is important to them. If you want to say somebody that's going to be planning people, for example, they can go in here, they'll see the resource planning. This is the sheet I showed you earlier. You can put those sheets down on a dashboard. You can put reports against those if you wanted to say, I want to make sure that everybody's fully utilized or something like that. We can put a report against that. You can put graphs against it, anything like that for planning purposes. Or let's say you have somebody that only plans for balance sheet items or income statement items that don't pertain to projects, that are non-project based. You could create a dashboard for them so they only see depreciation planning, rent planning, capital planning, things like that. That way it's easier for users to hone in on what they need to see within Adaptive, and it makes it easier for them to use. Another thing that's really helpful with the dashboards is you can quickly add some KPIs and some charts and graphs in here. So that way I want to see my revenue for June and see where we're at. You close the month or you want to see what you did the previous month, you can quickly flip to the previous month and then see the data for the previous month. And you can see a quick snapshot down here of what your income statement, like the summary items from your income statement, what that would look like by month, by quarter, by year. Pretty much any way you want to slice and dice the data, we can show it to you in a dashboard just to get a quick glance of how your business is doing. Another thing that can be done is you can drill down into the organizations to say, hey, I only want to see it for this specific organization. Let's say you're an engineering firm and you just want your system engineer to go in and see their section. They could just drill into their section. There's also security settings within Adaptive. Let's say Susan she's only responsible for Poppy's org, for example. We could set up her user access so that way she only sees org 1.132 here. So when she opens it, she only sees data that pertains to her organization. And she can have multiple orgs that she can see, or just one or all of them, depending on her access. There's also security around salary, for example. If you have a sheet that has salary data, I think I showed that to you earlier here in the workforce planning, you can set this sheet to say, yes, this has salary data on it. We only want these users to be able to see salary. When you set up the users, you say they either have salary or don't have salary. And if they don't have salary, the sheet is not available for them to see. So there's a lot of security and there's a lot of ways to slice and dice the data once you get in there. So that's dashboards. Now for reports, there's a couple different ways to do reports. There's the HTML reports that's within Workday Adaptive. This one I brought up, if you use Cost Point, you're familiar with the project status report. We've mimicked that project status report with this planning tool. So you'll see here we have drill down here where you can drill down into your projects. If I wanted to look at a specific project, I can focus in on those projects. And then I can see what the forecast is for the month. I can see what the actuals are for the month, and I can see what the variance is for the month. You can also start drilling into that data if you want to see what makes up that data. It'll take you to the areas to show which organizations make up that data. So there's a lot of ways to start drilling in to see how your business is doing, how it's operating, where you may have room for improvement. My favorite part of Adaptive of everything is the Office Connect tool. As I said earlier, I love Excel. It's still my favorite thing. Office Connect is just an add-on to Excel. So you'll see here, I am in Excel. And what it does is you add an extra tab here on your Excel tool that allows you to start drilling into Adaptive and bringing the data from Adaptive directly into Excel. You can have it formatted just like Excel. You can do conditional formats, any of the fun Excel stuff that you normally do, you can do here, but you have the added benefit of just automatically bringing in data from Adaptive. So you'll see here, you can bring in all of your accounts. Any account you have in Adaptive, you can bring in here. You can bring in time periods. You can bring in all the different levels. And Cost Point's case is typically in organizations. So you can bring in your orgs if you want to filter on orgs. Here we have dimensions set up, so you can do reports based on projects or any other dimension that you want to. For the purpose of this demonstration, I just brought up a simple income statement. You'll see just a simple roll-up income statement here. It's through period April. Let's say you wanted to see how May looked. You can actually go into the workbook properties, change your period. Let's say March. Let's go back in time. You forgot what you did in March. So you want to change it to March. You say, okay. All you have to do is hit refresh, and it's going to automatically populate that data with March. You'll see the heading changed. I have it set with a label so the heading changes what data you're looking at, and you'll see you're looking at your current period. You can go to the review tab here just to make sure that I didn't pull one over on you. You can see here that you're looking at your current period of March. Over here, you're looking at your year to date for March. You're looking at your prior year. You can bring in any of the data and have it automatically populate. So when Susan and I were talking about it, takes me about an hour to do our reporting package. We have lots of reports, a lot of reports. So I have to go through and update them. Please don't tell Susan how easy this is. All I'm doing, she's going to wonder what I do with all my free time. Change this date, say okay, hit refresh, and hit save, and then I say, Susan, your report's ready. So
Well,
it's that easy.
I was going to tell you, Shauna, that one of the things that for me when I started learning adaptive was the fact of how easy it was. So how easy it was to update these reports, because I'd been getting the reports from you and I was like, oh my gosh, this must take her forever. And then I was like, show me how to update this. And you're like, oh, it's just like this. And I was like, on to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That being said, Office Connect is my favorite tool. I create reports in it almost daily just because it's, hey, I want to see these costs by individuals. I want to see utilization. I bring it in. I put the intersections in there. Within a few minutes, it's done. And I have the data. So it's a very powerful tool. And I love it.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you,
You are
Susan.
welcome.
I love it ties right into our final fifth lesson, and that's user adoption. Because I imagine, Shauna, do people call you to get their own dashboard or certain reports? But like you said, when Susan saw it, she said, wait, I can do this.
Yeah.
So let me share my screen. And let's talk a little bit about user adoption, because we've been using this for 8 years. So it must be completely accepted and pretty easy to use. So we'd love to hear from you both.
Yeah, so I feel like our team has really benefited from the implementation of Workday Adaptive. As you've seen already, it has a very user-friendly interface. And we're able to create those custom dashboards. You're right. People contact me and they're like, hey, I'd like to see a dashboard that has X, Y, and Z on it. Can you create that for me? And I'm able to either create reports and bring that into a dashboard or put those metrics up for them so they can easily see what's important to them to manage their business. Same thing for reports. People are constantly reaching out to me like, hey, I want to give this person a raise. I want to spend this much money. How do I see that in Adaptive? And they now know that they can go in, they can do their version comparisons, they can make the changes, they can do their scenario planning to see how that might impact their business. And it's been really helpful for them to see that. And also just giving people access to Office Connect has been very powerful and very empowering for our employees.
And the other
Thanks,
thing,
Shauna. Go
can I
ahead,
add one
Susan.
other thing? Sorry.
Of
The other
course.
thing too, the annual budget process that we go through,
Yeah.
like when we have to go through that and we have to get users to go in, managers and stuff to go in and put in their inputs, it's very easy for them to understand like how to get their inputs in. It doesn't take, it's not a rocket science to get something into Adaptive, which is fantastic. And they can see, as soon as they save, they can see the output, like they can see how they're going to be running for that month or for that year or whatever when they make those changes.
Yeah, that's right, Susan. That's something that's been really helpful is we have the database out there and we can create formulas in our accounts that kind of give them a starting point that says that this is what you've spent for the past 6 months. Here's the average. Here's your starting point if you were going to continue down this path. And they already have something to even go back and look at without having to try to understand, well, how much do I spend in travel? I don't know, because it'll show the actuals to date. It'll show what those rolling averages are, and they can adjust it accordingly. And it's been super helpful for them.
Thank you so much. Shauna, I have a question about implementation of adaptive.
Sure.
Did we do it in a phased approach? And I know it was 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So things have changed too.
Yeah.
And that could be something else. Has it been easy to move up to the other version? But the implementation itself, and you're running our practice to implement adaptive too.
Yeah. So we did it in a phased approach for ours internally and also externally for our clients. For us internally, we wanted a more, we'll call it an organizational budget. So by our org, our marketing org, our sales org, or lines of business where we're actually producing revenue, things like that. We wanted that where we were building up to our income statement, our balance sheet, our cash flow. That's what we were focused on when we did our implementation. Once that's done, then we were able to shift our focus to do more of a project-based forecast where you saw the PSR data there and we could see our projects, how we forecast against our projects, the costs, the revenue, our gross margin, our profitability by project, and how we're tracking our actuals against our forecast. So that's the method we took. We're finding a lot of our clients actually do it the opposite way. They want to see their project data first. They want to implement the project. They're not as concerned about their fringe costs, their FUTA, their SUTA, those types of things that flow into their income statement. They want to see their projects. They want to know which projects are profitable and which ones aren't. So those clients typically do the phase of they're going to do all their project data first, get their PSRs ready. They call them project control analysts, we'll say, in there to be able to focus on their project data. Once that's done, then we start meeting with the accounting team to build up their income statement, their balance sheet, their cash flow, things like that. So those are the phases that we see. So it could be either, but yes, it is definitely a phased approach is how we typically to see it.
Understood. Susan, I have a question for you. Speaking about projects, can you talk a little bit about why this process and the software works for government contractors?
From a government contractor perspective, one of the most important things is to be able to, one, support if you're going to be doing forward pricing rate agreements or anything like that, and relying on this data for that, you have to be able to document and know the assumptions that you used and essentially be able to articulate to someone, the assumptions and things that you use to get to your rates, your numbers, and things like that. The other thing about the product is that it's very nice because you can go and you can basically calculate indirect rates. You can do the things that you would need to do in the systems and build your sheets to essentially facilitate those rate calculations and then doing the comparisons of where were you off? Why were the rates higher? Why were the rates lower? Those types of things. So it's a nice tool from that perspective. And again, the kind of the funny thing that's always to me is the fact that we implement cost point and things like that. We use it internally as well as our accounting system. So the same way that we do that is the same way with adaptive. So we not only use it and do the interfaces and everything like that, we actually help people do that. So I will let Shauna expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And that actually brought up some good points about how we use adaptive or implement adaptive with our clients. A lot of our clients that do use, let's say, cost point as an example, they have T&M contracts, they have CPFF contracts, and we have to build up their revenue based on those provisional forward pricing rates, right? We have to bring in their PLC rate table so that way we can see their labor categories when those rates are going to escalate and be able to forecast based on that. So that way we have the proper escalation in for their T&M rates. The cost plus, we want to make sure if you have an employee sitting at a site rate or an on-site or off-site rate, we want to make sure we're applying those overhead pools appropriately. So all of those complexities with government contracting, we've been able to build into our models so that way we can build up your revenue appropriately and be able to forecast your revenue appropriately. So that's been super helpful for our clients.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Shauna. All right. So we've covered the 5 key lessons learned from NeoSystems' successful FP&A journey, the challenges with Excel, selecting the right tool set, the power of a rolling forecast, the importance of reporting in dashboards, and achieving user acceptance. We're going to take questions next, any questions that have come in through the chat. I want to thank Susan and thank Shauna for sharing the fantastic story of NeoSystems' journey. And we'll take questions next. Thank you.